following thoughts began with some reflections I had a few months ago on one of the trails I often visit. The context was that of a kind of generalized feeling of regret, among other things, about the sense of life having so far been characterized largely by sorrowful sentiments and circumstances. The impulse was toward an idea for how to interpret such past events and circumstances in a productive and forward-looking way rather than through the self-flagellant and self-defeating perspective of regret. It could also be seen as a gesture toward a philosophical framework whereby one might leverage and orient one's past to their present and future empowerment and actualization in a conducive and not in an oppositional way. While we probably can't expect to never experience regret, would that we might possess such an idea as providing a goal, a telos, for putting the past into a healthy perspective. I call this to be born anew, or reframing regret. Long laden with the weights of melancholy, dejection, disillusionment, nihilism, and their host of affective and intellectual ilk, I walked toward the path that began near the road. The added weight of regret had also begun to percolate into my being and claim its place alongside them, as the negative reflection on their having led to certain particular actions and inactions, yes, but also in the form of reflecting on their long-standing prevalence as a protracted accumulation, as a seemingly definitive whole that seemed to summarize the overall experience of life. As I embarked on the path, I entered the shadow made by the steep slope it traversed. It was a place with which I was not unfamiliar, but which on this occasion presented a new face to me in the form of a thick blanket of snow on account of it being late autumn. They were very heavy weights, whose burden I had recently come to doubt that I could bear for much longer. But they weren't such weights as could simply be dropped or thrown off, and I had come to grapple with a very real prospect that their removal, their end, could be effected by nothing less than my own. I followed the snowy path as it zigzagged down to the canyon floor through the semi-arid landscape and the short, broad, gnarled juniper trees that consisted largely of deadened wood, but which clung defiantly and even robustly to life. I descended, yet I felt buoyed, but by what I knew not, as close as I can characterize it, by an unnamed but definite hope and design. I reached the bottom and peered over and up at the sheer vertical face of high rock that comprised the canyon's opposite wall, with its many striated layers, its hues of red, orange, and black, and its sculpted, chiseled, weathered countenance of subtle cracks, indentations, and shadows. Then, almost as though it came as a suggestion from the environs themselves, I felt an idea begin to crystallize. Between myself and the rock wall there was a stand of taller trees near the creek bed. For a time I watched their few remaining brownish-yellow leaves as they fluttered in the breeze. Giving voice to this idea, I posed to myself the following as a question and a hope, as an aspiration and as an imperative. Can one be born anew? That is to say, not in the sense of beginning this life again, nor in the sense of beginning another life, but rather in the midst of this very life. I saw a raven soaring above the canyon near the opposite wall. I fixed my gaze upon its course as it flew out over the chasm, disappeared from view behind the opposite plateau, and then appeared again. Each time I thought it had gone away, landed, and occupied itself out of my sight, it came back into view again. It seemed to soar groundlessly, persistently at the heights with less effort than it took me to stand idly upon the canyon floor. Can one be born anew? I mean, by having digested experience, by having assimilated and appropriated and transformed experience in the past, all the moments and the eras, the events and the chapters, the occasions and the passages? By having transformed not only these, but also the idea of experience itself, what it is to experience and to reckon with one's experiences, into the sustenance of the spirit, into something ready and pliant, so that one might face one's horizon as finely open, lengthwise and breadthwise? Can one become born anew in such an inflection point of the spirit, whereby so many of one's experiences, having before been so many encumbering weights, now become fully the plenitude of so many provisions? Can one come to draw the joy and fulfillment from pain, woe, and emptiness that one draws from joy and fulfillment themselves? Can folly be harnessed by wisdom? From dejection and idleness might one derive and empower the most earnest and passionate of projects? And from nothing, the ownmost and most real of things? Can one make of each trial a fulcrum? Can tragedy become a lever as triumphant as triumph? Can catastrophe be wielded as a hammer, darkness as a torch? The will could be that one might emerge as though from the womb, with one's so digested experiences brought to bear for the first time primarily to make the world over in their image, much as the eyes, ears, and pangs of an infant are brought to bear as a template and a sponge upon things. So, can one be born anew in the kind of inflection point whereby the world not only happens to one, but one begins to happen to the world, whereby the spirit becomes not only a repository but a wellspring? Having thus posed this question, this hope, this goal, I began to glean a glimpse of regret as a lack of this kind of experiential digestion, as the desire to deny the spirit sustenance outright. No more ought I wish that my actions and experiences had been different or less adverse than that I should turn away water when thirsty, or spurn the very air which I breathe. So interpreted, no more ought I regret things past than the infant should wish, if it were able, to be deprived of its perception. No more ought I do so than the gnarled juniper would extract its roots from the nourishment of the soil, or the rock wall could furl its brow in negation of the primordial upheaval that made it, or the raven fold up its wings in mid-flight and plummet to the canyon floor. I walked back up the winding path, more hopeful, more illuminated, more forward-looking than before. I ascended with the satisfaction and the confidence of having found the vista of my heretofore unnamed horizon, and with the motivation it bestowed upon me, and even with the hope of future hope. I emerged back into the sunlight, knowing it would be a long road ahead, yet reveling in this, welcoming it as a long-parched soul, with the experience of this occasion having itself become a provision. Indeed, as the backpack and treasure chest of all other provisions.